ahead and get started. And then as people end up joining, people can join. But anyway, just a quick introduction to start. So I'm Michelle Goldberg. I'm the president of Gold Ribbon Rescue. For those of you who I haven't met yet, welcome everybody to our monthly The More You Know session. And so we have been hosting Debbie and Diane with C-Spot Behave. They are one of our favorite preferred training partners. We've been working pretty extensively with them with dogs that are currently foster dogs in care, as well as we've had people that have adopted dogs that have gone to them as well. I actually just gave your name out to somebody, hopefully she contacted you, who has a golden retriever puppy yesterday. So anyway, so they're one of our favorite partners. Our website does have our preferred trainers and vets if you are ever looking for somebody, but with C-Spot Behave, they cover a fairly broad geographical area in the Austin. I won't send you guys to San Antonio, but I'll let you guys decide about that. But in the Austin area. So Debbie and Diane are the owners and trainers of C-Spot Behave, and I'm going to turn it over to them and let them introduce themselves and their business. And then they'll tell us how they have been helping Gold Ribbon and other dogs. And then we'll jump into the meat of the program, which is all about resource guarding.
Thank you. I'm Debbie, and Diane is wave Diane. There we go. Together we make up C-Spot Behave, and on our website, which is C-Spot Behave, our bios are here. And yes, I am holding a cat. I have not betrayed dogs. I'm holding a cat because I help cats and dogs get along as well. In fact, I'm working with a potential adopter family with one of the GRR dogs and make sure that the dog can get along with their cat. So that's one of the things that I do. My background is actually in education. I have a master's in curriculum, and I was a high school educator for almost 20 years. And actually, that's not all that different than dog training, believe it or not. It involves cookies and making sure everybody's safe. It's a lot of that. But my background with dogs is that I absolutely love working with the dogs that have challenges, maybe fearful, maybe aggression, maybe having trouble interpreting how their environment has changed, whatever they need. I like helping them manage change or manage their emotions. And so I'm a certified canine behavior consultant. That's my specialty. And so I've gone through the education as a trainer and then also as a behavior consultant. And when Diane and I decided to work together, we kind of two sides of one coin. So I'm the nerdy psychology trainer part, and Diane is the lead trainer and also more of the working out what the plan would be to enact the training. So we flip together in that way. And so I will hand it off to Diane, and she'll explain how she does her part.
Thank you. So again, part of C-Spot Behave. I started C-Spot Behave actually in California, and I was thinking about this almost 15 years ago. Scary. And so really why I started it and got into dog training was because you can see in that picture right there with my dog, Harley, she was my crazy lady that decided to redecorate my kitchen by pulling counter tiles off the countertops and decided I need to do something about it. So went from working with her, training her, to working with then a trainer behaviorist in California, apprenticed under her, and then started training. And what I really appreciated about what we were doing there and brought here is the in-home training, which is so important because so many of the sticking points for training happen in home. So that's kind of where I jump in. Debbie also does in-home training, but my big thing is going into the homes, figuring out what's happening with pet parents and happening with family and happening with the dogs, and helping come up with that training plan that often includes management. It includes skills, cues, different types of techniques in order to create that relationship and get the family to come together so that nobody's losing their minds, including your dogs. So
True.
That's my background is I just enjoy working with people and with dogs and really getting harmonious, happy families all together.
Yeah. And our joint philosophy is that, aside from the things we talk about with like no pain, no aversion, we're using positive reinforcement. We're looking for things like emotional safety, building trust, going beyond the basics to understanding what's going on with the dog at the root of their behavior, figuring out the why. And really, we are looking for helping the dog move along and progress from that base behavior. And because GRR often works with dogs that are coming from tough backgrounds, like a breeding background, it's really great to be able to go in and work with the dog that has some trauma to release that trauma. So speaking of trauma, when a dog has some trauma, sometimes they resource guard, and that's why that's the topic. That's why Diane and I thought a good topic would be that for you guys. And so this webinar tonight is understanding what resource guarding is and what it isn't, when is it aggression or is it guarding? And so what we're going to talk about today is the natural level of resource guarding, because that's what dogs do, actually what humans do as well, how you can recognize early signs and kind of get around it before it becomes a problem. We're going to look at some proven strategies to reduce it. And when you're a foster or when you're a brand new owner, really being able to recognize those signs and get a hold of it ahead of time. Some very safe ways, and actually we're going to talk about some very unsafe ways that if you Google resource guarding, they kind of pop to the top, and Diana are like, please don't do that. You're going to get bitten. So we'll talk about those too. And we'll talk about some treatments that might actually come from your veterinarian if your dog is an extreme resource guarder. And then we're going to talk about some case studies as well. As always, throughout our webinars, if you have questions, you're welcome to raise a hand and jump in. We can do that. We will have question and answer at the end, so we'll do that as well. But stop and stop and jump in if you have a question in the middle. It is absolutely welcome.
Yeah. You can also type in the message, the chat too, as well.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention our etiquette. So etiquette is you don't have to be on camera if you don't want to be. You can do it through the chat. And if you just mute your mic so that other people aren't interrupted when they're talking, that's lovely. All right, here we go.
I'm sorry, can I just jump in really quick?
Yeah.
Because there's some new people on and some people that new to Gold Ribbon and some people that haven't been on a webinar before. But you had mentioned earlier about talking about basically fear-free base training.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that Gold Ribbon really takes a very strong stance on. And we are 100% fear-free, force-free, positive reinforcement training only. And
Absolutely.
that is what we look for in the trainers that we work with to make sure that our philosophies totally align and that we are using science-based training that we know works. And that's one of the many things that we love about Debbie and Diane and C-Spot Behave.
Yeah, that's why I love working with you guys too, because I know that you're not going to ask me to do something that is philosophically not something we want to do. And so, and honestly, resource guarding is one of those places where trainers do some things that are like, whoa, that's really unkind to the dog. Like trainers frequently, if they are not force-free trainers, they will use shock to try to get dogs to stop resource guarding. And so this is something we'll talk about as we go. Thanks, Michelle, for bringing that up. It's one of those places that's like, punishment comes in here a lot. So what is resource guarding? Well, by definition, it's a dog trying to keep something they want. Really very simple. They're holding on to it. And so resource guarding is when the dog uses some type of communication to say, this is mine and I am not sharing. So they use their body language, which is usually stiffening around the item, growling, and they can use a lot of other types of body language to show, or like turning their body. We'll talk about that more specifically, but to say, this is something I value and I am not sharing it, okay? One thing I want to be really clear about is that resource guarding is absolutely normal behavior for dogs, actually all mammals, including humans. We resource guard. And I mean, there might be that person in your life where, like, if you reach across the table and take a fry off their plate, they'll lose it. Like, don't touch my food. That's a resource guarder. right? That don't touch my stuff. That's someone who is guarding their stuff. And you might even think of yourself as a resource guarder around certain things where it's, I don't want to share this. This is something that's mine and I'm not open to sharing it. That doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you want, clear about your boundaries around something. And for dogs, because they are mostly scavengers, a lot of people call dogs predators, but they're not really fully predators. Their behavior when they're out in cities and they're not owned by and cared for by humans, or when they're wild, dogs are mostly scavengers. And then if they can't find it easily, then they'll try to hunt. And so when you see a dog grab something to eat, all the other dogs will go, ooh, what you got? And immediately that dog's going to hunker down around it or run off with their food. Absolutely normal. So in terms of evolution, dogs protecting their food is something that's kind of wired. I'd say it's a behavior that's wired. It's genetically wired. It passes down generation by generation. How it's wired is emotional. In other words, they are anxious about their belongings. I don't know if you've ever seen a dog, you give them a treat and they walk around and whimper while it's in their mouth and until they find a place to hide it. And then they sit there and they're not sure. And so they pick it up again and they go around again and try to find a better place to hide it. That's a very strong emotional response to the value of that thing in their mouth. And here's a good story for you. I had a dog named Kirby. He was part dachshund and part border collie. I won't explain that. He was an odd looking dog, but my partner bought him one of those 3-foot rawhide rolls before we knew better. And so it was longer than almost longer than his body because he was a dachshund length. And when he got it, his eyes kind of rolled back in his head and he kind of lost his mind. And he was running around the yard with this thing in his mouth and snarling at anything that moved. He lost it. It was such a strong emotional response to this joyful thing that, he wouldn't even let me come near him. So when a dog has an intense emotional response like that, what could I trade to get it away from him? It wouldn't have been appropriate for me to run and tackle him and rip it out of his mouth. That would have been very intense for him. And yet that's what most trainers that are force trainers would say. I should have shown some dominance, held him down and taken it from him to show him that I was the one in control. So we'll talk about that in a little bit future when we talk about techniques. The other thing is that there are a lot of environmental factors for resource guarding, meaning if there's competition in the household or competition in the group, competition can increase resource guarding. So if the dogs don't feel relaxed around resources, that will increase their desire to guard. Okay. If you think about past resource or past experiences, if they experienced a lack of resources, if they were strays, if they, were neglected, if they were in breeding situations where they weren't given enough food, you'll also see resource guarding. Okay, let's bust some myths. And this is where you're welcome to ask questions. If you think of some things that you've heard, let's see if it's a myth or reality. Okay, so I think the myths are real interesting. First and foremost, the myth that most comes out is that your dog is being dominant. In other words, they are claiming something because they're also trying to be the boss and to be highest in the hierarchy in the household or in the dog hierarchy. And it really isn't part of the hierarchy at all. We do know that whole hierarchy about a dog being an alpha has been debunked. Scientifically, it's not true. We know that was a mistake. In fact, the man who thought of it, who wrote about it, pretty quickly afterwards realized he was wrong and has spent like 30 years of his career trying to get people to get rid of it, that he knew it was wrong. So dogs don't live in a hierarchy where there's a dominant dog trying to claim everything. It's not about dominance, it's about I want, and therefore I'm going to try to keep it. So it's not, I steal your stuff to prove I'm more powerful than you are. It's not, I steal your stuff to prove I don't have to listen to you, Mom. It's not that at all. It's, I like that thing and I'm going to hold on to it. And the more I like it, the more I'm going to hold on to it. Okay. And because of that, because people think it is dominance, they think you have to show the dog you're the dominant one and take the thing away. You show them who's boss. So if your dog shows any type of resource guarding, then you're supposed to pin the dog down and take the thing from them. Or, God forbid, if they're growling while they're eating, you're supposed to reach in and put your hand in their bowl to show that you can do it. You can take their food from them. That is really a great way to get bitten and a terrible way to manage resource guarding. What you actually do is you tell the dog they're unsafe. You increase their emotional response. You actually show them you aren't safe. You don't get to have things. I'm going to dominate you. I'm going to bully you. And you're increasing their desire to hide and protect their food. So you become the problem when you do that. Your dog isn't also just being stubborn. They're not just hunkering down for the sake of it. They're having a strong emotional response that is a habit. It's uncontrollable. They can't actually think it through. It just kicks up. So this is not something that they are making a decision around. They're not choosing it. And so really the reality for them is they are seeing something they want or desire, like food. They're hungry. They have a response to it because they've had a lack in the past. So they hunker down around it to protect it. And as soon as we come in to disturb the balance, we put our hand in the bowl or we try to take it from them to prove it. And I've seen people say things like, well, spit on their food to show that you actually had the food first. I mean, gross. I know the reasoning behind it is because when wolves eat, sometimes the females who are pregnant get to eat first. That was misinterpreted as the alpha female gets to eat first. It's just so the saliva is on there, so you taste that other dog's saliva or other wolf's saliva. It's just terribly misplaced. But it's the idea that if I spit on your food, I'm more dominant. It's terrible. All of these ideas of I place my importance above yours come in. Keep in mind that because your dog is operating on programming, it's natural, therefore it's quick, it's instinctual, it's emotional, it's not thought through, it's a knee-jerk reaction, and it's not something that they're pondering. And so the moment when they start wondering what's happening is when you're actually putting your hand in their bowl, or you're taking the bowl away, or you're yelling at them. That's when they start going, wait, what's happening? And then they actually double down on their emotions. Have any of you heard anything else, any other advice on when your dog resource guards?
One of the most common things that I see is people being like firm voice and taking.
Right.
And, show them you're the boss. You have to talk sternly and take the item from them, whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's the show them the boss and take it away. Being firm, being loud, or, the loud no. All of that again increases the dog's stress, which means they're more likely to guard or even snap, and react to you. Because, we're telling them, no, bad dog, right? And so they're going, wait, why am I being chastised? And really, the response you need to have for them is calming, relax. It's going to be okay, right? Relax, give them space and distance. And here's the really paradoxical thing you need to do is if they're guarding, you need to give them more. So if I'm worried I'm going to lose something, if I get more of it, I'm going, oh, wait, there's more? I don't have to worry about there being less. Okay. So you have to prove to the dog that their thought of lack of abundance or their fear of loss is actually wrong, and they're going to get as much as they need. And though you're going to be calm and you're going to be compassionate and you're going to be level when they're having these strong emotions. And that's really the opposite of the way I was raised, because I was raised that in a family where, like, if you're not going to share, you're going to lose it, right? So that was the way we reacted to our dogs. So if you're not going to share, we're going to take it away. But what does that fulfill? Their fear that it's going to be taken away. So you're just proving why they should actually guard. Yeah. Okay. Paulette and Kathy. So Paulette first, I think. What? Paulette, you're still muted. Do you want to type it? Diane, do you think you can help Paulette while we go to Kathy, maybe? Let's see what we got here. Okay, Kathy, I'm going to skip to you while we try to get Paulette online.
Okay, and I may be jumping ahead, or I may be totally on something that was or will be on a different webinar.
Sure.
But what about if the thing they have, you don't want to just take it because you want to be, prove your dominance. You need to take it because it's dangerous for them to have it.
Yeah, we're going to get to that for sure.
Okay.
And it's a great question because, like, let's say they've grabbed a piece of glass, and you've got to get it away from them. We're still going to use the tactics we have. And there may be a time where you just have to take it from them. And I would say that if you have 15 times that we've traded and one time where you have to just take it, that's okay. Right.
Okay.
It's more of it's kind of like a numbers balance,
Right.
Because I sure as heck, if I've dropped a plate and it's broken and my dog grabs a piece of plate that has food on it, I'm going to tackle my dog. You bet I am. Even if there's a risk of being bitten. Right.
Yeah.
So that's really a great question. And when we go through the techniques, remind me of that question if I don't address it again, because there are times where you're just going to risk the bite because you don't want your dog to get hurt.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Great question. You bet. All right. Oops. Hey. I'm driving fast today. There we go. Oh, look at that sweet face and all that sugar. Okay. So this goes into a little bit more depth. If you really want to dive down a little bit more about resource guarding, we did talk a little bit about it's being a survival instinct. You're programmed to be able to manage, to survive. And so guarding your food is hardwired. And so even puppies will resource guard. Now, if you're picking a puppy from a litter and you're watching them and you've got a puppy that's doing severe resource guarding and growling, don't pick that puppy, because that puppy already has an imbalance in a direction that's probably going to be a very aggressive dog. So if you see resource guarding with a puppy that's 4 weeks to 8 weeks old and they're truly growling and biting and snarling, that's a puppy that you do not want to have in your household, because it's going to be a lot of work when they're an adult. If they're just kind of fussing, that's okay.
So
Yes.
on that, because so my dog, one of my dogs, he started his resource guarding at 4 months old, but he came from a litter of 11 and they were totally bottle raised. So they had, and until they were adopted, pretty much, they were fed individually. We had to make sure they were gaining weight. They really didn't, none of the puppies had the community bowl opportunity.
Yep.
And most of those puppies from that litter had resource guarding issues, significant. But they didn't start showing it until they were several months old. Is that typical?
Yeah. So there's two things that happened there. They were only children, so they never learned to share. Okay, that's the first thing. And then on top of that, they hit adolescence without having learned to share. And so when they hit that adolescent point where sharing is very difficult, They didn't have the lessons to help them. And they had the physical power and presence and the stubbornness of adolescence, and they hit hard resource guarding. So not being able to, wrestle and tussle and go through the little mini fights.
Well, they were together, like playing together, but they didn't eat.
Yeah.
They all ate separately.
There's a lot of fussing around who gets a nipple and how, and that's a lot about the resource guarding. So they definitely, in that way, they didn't get that lesson. Now, it's very possible too that, I don't know how much you know about epigenetic changes, and those have to do with like your experiences slightly change your genetic setup, and your mother's experiences slightly change your genetic setup. And if mama went through trauma while they were in the womb, and they went through trauma as babies, it can twist the genetics just a little bit to add more resource guarding to their setup. So that's a possibility as well. So they may have been slightly moved towards having more resource guarding as a result of those experiences.
Here's the latest from the KWTX First Alert Weather Team.
We're getting KUTX. Is someone
There you
go. mute your mics, guys. Okay, and then resource guarding can be adaptive, meaning, I don't have enough, therefore I adapt to get more. So I wanted to just review those so that you're not thinking my dog is just being stubborn. All right, what triggers? These are specific to rescue dogs. I did this on purpose. I do specifically to rescue dogs, and we're going to do some things specifically to golden retrievers as well. So rescue dogs, as you know, experience a lot of stress and anxiety. And they're going to be bringing this burden in as they come into your homes. And you have to think about them when you're getting them settled. And so they're bringing in a little bit more stress. They're bringing in a little bit more sense of separation. They're, maybe feeling some loss. They could be feeling in some trauma, bringing in some trauma either medically or emotionally. And so because of that, they've got a heightened sense of stress that can lead to more resource guarding. So they're already a bit triggered. And if you've been in any of the other webinars, you might remember the term trigger stacking, where if you experience several triggers, and it makes you more and more sensitive each time. The new environment can seriously contribute to the stress or a trigger for resource guarding. Being unfamiliar with the territory or the other animals or the rules of the household can make them think, this might be my only meal in this place, or my only bone in this place, or my only toy, or my only bed. And this is the only time I'm going to get it, and I'm going to hunker down around it. And they can think that every time it arrives. This is the last time I'm going to get to eat in this place. So they can't predict because they don't have a pattern to predict from. And if you think of it from the dog's perspective, if they've bounced around a little bit, even within GRR, if they've gone to several different fosters, it's possible that in their mind, they have no idea what's going to happen next for them. And if there are more animals that they've gone from one house to another and they're new animals, they're going to think nothing belongs to them. So they're going to start trying to stake out what could belong to them and become more guardy. Competition with other animals in the home. You will see if dogs bounce from original owners to shelter, to rescue, to fosters, etc., and they have multiple places, you might see more marking from males. And you might even see something that I saw with one of my rescues, where I had a female dog that purposefully peed in the food bowl of the resident dog. Now, that's not only marking, it's also saying anything that goes in here is mine. Just clearly, not just territory, but I'm claiming it. I'm going to get whatever comes in because you're not going to want it. So they can go that far. They can try to establish, I get fed first, by scaring the other dog and pushing them away, or even fighting. And then uncertainty increases anxiety. We've talked about this in other webinars, that anxiety is not being able to predict what's going to happen. And so if you can, when you get a new dog in your home, if you can create predictable patterns. Name meal times, have them happen at exactly the same time, have them in the exact same space, don't move bowls around, have them in the same bowl, call the dog in the same way. Whatever you can do to make it really, really predictable, you will have dogs calm down faster and much less likely to guard. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's talk about retrievers. And I think it's really funny because when retrievers get guardy, what do? Can you answer? What's the first thing they do with guarding? It's in their mouth, and they walk around with it. I went to visit a client, actually one that Michelle recommended to me. There's a guardy dog, and I was wearing a baseball cap that I usually wear because I get hot and sweaty. And I set it down, and the dog had it in his mouth, and he carried it around for the entire session. He would not give it up. He guarded that cap for the entire session. Retrievers, they want to carry things. One of the remedies for resource guarding for retrievers is give them something to carry, encourage them to carry, make it theirs to carry, put food on it so they'll carry whatever you need to get something in their mouth so they feel better. They actually relax when they have something in their mouth. So you can actually go right to that embedded programming for them and have them put something in their mouth. So we know that they're gentle, right? Everybody knows that golden retrievers are gentle, so they're not going to resource guard. And that's mistake number one. And I know Michelle just pounds her head against the wall, and I know that other trainers do, that when people make the assumption that they just got a golden retriever and so there's not going to be a single problem. And actually, because they are retrievers and the programming is to go get something and take it and keep it in their mouths, that means that they can actually be very guardy because they're programmed to have this thing in their mouth and keep it. And it also means that humans make a huge mistake because we think they're sweet dogs that we can just take things out of their mouths. And so we will assume they're likely to give it up, and they may snap because they're guarding and we're making a mistake of assuming they're going to be sweet. They tend to be conflict avoidant because they are sweet and gentle, but that means that, again, they're going to back themselves into a corner to avoid you, and then you're going to pursue to go get that thing, and then they feel cornered and come out of the corner snapping. So the fact that retrievers are so sweet is often a bad thing because we humans make mistakes in judgment around them. So my advice is assume that because it has teeth, it can bite, and work around the retriever the same way you would work around any other dog, with the assumption that because they're guarding, you need to handle it as if the dog can bite, and not override your judgment because they're sweet retrievers. Here are the reasons why, okay? Retrievers are extremely food motivated and therefore will really guard food, okay? They tend to be more guardy around the same time every day when they're hungry. The hungrier they are, the closer to mealtime, the more guardy they are. They really tend to guard food bowls. So please don't leave food bowls out. Feed them on time, and when they're done eating, put the food bowls away. If you leave food bowls out, they can actually have guarding episodes with their housemates with just the food bowls sitting on the ground. It can be later, an hour, it can be middle of the day, and their housemate dog walks past their food bowl and they have a fight over the food bowl. So please, after they eat, food bowl goes away. It should not sit on the floor. It should not be on the counter where they can see it. It needs to be out of sight. Okay, so take them away. And then they can be really razzed by special treats. So sometimes it's better if you train them with just their kibble so they don't get overexcited about high value treats. So you can kind of push them into guarding with it being too high value. And here are some signs that we tend to misinterpret because they're hiding them. A lot of times the body language signs that we would see in other dogs being very obvious are kind of masked in them. One of them we've talked about before, and that's the whites of the eyes where you see the whale eye. And sometimes golden retrievers give side eye anyway. They have a golden retriever side eye, where most dogs give a side eye or a whale eye when they are fearful or upset, possibly ready to bite. For some reason, golden retrievers have that just for other expression. So we may not think they're ready to bite and they're giving a bite signal. They don't necessarily growl or show teeth. It's been kind of bred out of them, but they do often, they might lick their lips. So look for that. They do stiffen though. And so if they get stiff over something and get slow, assume they're guarding it. They don't necessarily give stress signals like flattening the ears. How do you see their ears are nice and soft? So they don't necessarily flatten them tightly. So you need to know your dog's signals and assume that if they've moved slower or they've gotten stiffer, they are guarding. Okay. So the takeaway with, oh, I'm sorry, that one just took off with me. The takeaway with retrievers is our culture has made the assumption that retrievers are just gentle. And so we tend to miss a lot of signals with retrievers. You're really going to see a lot more guarding around food with retrievers. And you're going to miss the signals because some of them just aren't there. They don't show all the face stuff that other dogs do. So you're going to be looking for context. You're going to be looking for whether or not they slow down or get stiff. Those are the biggest signals for them. How did I get the hat back? Paulette, that's a great question. So, the dog he had the hat and he was just going circles and circles. And if I gave him any attention at all, looked at him, got a treat out or whatever, he just kind of like, I've got your hat. So all I did when it was time for me to leave is I took my bag and I took a handful of treats and I set my treats on my chair when I stood up, just a whole bunch of treats, and I walked away. And he dropped the treats and he ate them, ate the treats that were on my chair. I dropped the hat, to eat the treats on the chair. And I didn't go after the hat. I just left it. And when I got to the door and I was saying goodbye to the owners, I said, when I leave, I'd like you to go pick up the hat and just come outside and bring it to me. Because it wasn't me retrieving the hat. And so they did. The dog didn't care. When I walked out the door, the hat had no more value. And so when the owner picked it up, he could bring it out to me. The value the hat held was whether or not I was going to challenge him for the hat. And if I had tried to take it at any point, the challenge would have been worth it to him. And so it had to be me leaving before he was being willing to actually let go of the hat. And I could have picked the hat up the next session if I had to. So, and this is an extreme case. This dog has really done some very serious damage on people. So I was not willing to challenge him for the hat. I was willing to let the hat go if I had to. But he'd given some stitches to people, so I wasn't about to fight him for it. So, I'm just put some treats down. Let's see if he drops the hat. If he does, just bring it out to me. And he didn't care about his owners noticing he had the hat. It was just that if I paid attention to him when he had the hat, he would, haha, I've got it. So I knew the challenge was for me to try to get it from him, and I wasn't about to. Sometimes it's not worth it. It's just my hat. He'll let go of it eventually. And I think that's really hard for people. Sometimes it's, that dog better give me the damn hat. I'm not going to get in a fight. He's got better teeth than I do. The other thing is, if the dog's itching for a fight, the best possible thing you can do is ignore the energy and just let it de-escalate. Even if he had started to shred the hat, which would have been really an invitation for me to escalate with him, I probably would have just walked out of the room if he started shredding the hat. I would have just picked up my stuff and left to see if he would just let it go. So he really was trying to get into a fight. Just, come on, let's go. But he also has conflict aggression, which is a little bit different. He invites fights a lot. So, great question.
We had an incident with one of this was a few years ago, one of my dog's litter mates that got adopted, but the people ended up returning him because his resource guarding was so bad. But when we asked them to send us some video of what was going on, what we learned was they were chasing him to try to get the thing, whatever it was. And, you know, today it might have been a paper towel on the floor. Tomorrow it was a shoe. You know, the next day it was something out of the trash can. But they didn't realize how much they were facilitating by continuing to chase the dog around the kitchen, trying to get whatever the thing was from him. And that just made the problem so much worse.
Yeah, it does. If you put the energy into it, the invitation to have an altercation around it, it just escalates.
Yeah.
He was the guy at the bar going, come on. I'm like, no, I don't want to fight you, man. I'm not interested.
I don't, and I apologize, Debbie. I'm going to jump in real quickly.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk too a little bit about the fact that dogs will do kind of the same behavior with other dogs too. So we tend to think of it in terms of just people-dog relationship. I didn't know if you wanted to mention.
Definitely. And I think that's a little further in, but I'll jump in now about it. And so, yeah, dogs, when they guard with each other, I've got a story where a dog, as soon as he grabbed a treat, even though the other dog was doing absolutely nothing, when the dog's name is Orson and his housemate is Daisy, he would grab the treat and go over to Daisy and eat it in her face, actually on her face, and to make her angry. And, you know, it was like, I've got a ha-ha, I'm eating a ha-ha-ha, you know, just to start the fight. And so, you know, dogs will start the fight if they can, if they are aching for that kind of altercation. And often that isn't just resource guarding. So I don't want that to get too muddy. Like I said, the dog that did that with the hat, that wasn't necessarily resource guarding. It was conflict aggression. He wanted me to fight him. This dog bringing the treat over and ha-ha-haing with this other dog, that was conflict aggression, not necessarily resource guarding. So I really don't want to muddy the water there. Most of the time when it's resource guarding, they don't do it to tease each other. There's a difference in that. So most of the time when they're hunkering down over it, that's resource guarding. If they're taking it, teasing it, running around with it, whatever, there's another energy in there that's kind of twisting it, that you address it differently. So yeah, stuff. So let's go to this next one. Here we go. Well, how do you recognize these signs? This is the overall. Really, you're looking for the subtle signs, which we just talked about. Prevention is way easier with resource guarding than it is trying to fix it afterwards, trying to address it once the dog has it. It's probably 500 times harder once the dog has the item. And then building trust is actually the secret. If the dog trusts you, that if you take something from them, that they're either going to get it back or something better, then the transactions are easy. So I have always said that resource guarding is economic, trading is economic, and so is leave it is economic, meaning the dog gets a payoff somehow. And so if your dog understands that there's a trade involved, they begin to trust you. Whereas I think people think leave it and resource guarding are things the dog just ought to do it because I said they should. And there's a real almost authoritarian, dictatorial energy in that. Like, you leave it because I said so. It doesn't work. It actually never works with kids or teenagers, and it doesn't work with dogs. And so if you think of it in terms of a transaction, you're exchanging, and the dog is getting a benefit, then it will continue to exchange and build trust. And over time, you can ask for a leave it. You can ask for them to not resource guard, and they will do it. And things go well. So the early warning signs that I was talking about earlier on the body, your dog, your resource guarder might show these. Your golden retriever may show some of these, but some dogs really show them. Like I have a Chihuahua shows all of these very clearly. So it depends on, do they have the perked up ears? Do they have the real clear face? But these are the physical signs of most dogs when they resource guard. So if you see those little hard stare and you see the whale eye, that's a good indication the dog is having an aggressive feeling. And so this isn't, none of these are just resource guarding. These are the body language of aggression. Okay. I have seen the hard stare from golden retrievers. And you know it because if you look and you're like, oh, that makes me feel, you can just feel it in your body when you get a hard stare from a dog. And unfortunately, as I said before, the whites of the eyes, golden retrievers show those sometimes when they're just giving a wide stare or wide look. So that it's not as obvious, the whale eye for them. The stiffening is for them. They stiffen when they don't want to share something. The body blocking is interesting. What they do is if they get something they don't want to share, they'll take it and they'll turn their body away from you. If they get a bone and they like it, and they'll just curl their body away. And if their back is to you, they're like, I'm not sharing this. I don't want to. And that's even if you're playing and they just turn away from you. That means that they aren't interested in interacting right now. They're too busy with the toy they have. That's very mild resource guarding. They're just saying, leave me alone with this for a minute. I want a private minute with this toy, please. It's fine. But moving their shoulders, their hips, or their body around and pushing between you and the thing is the body blocking. And it's actually a fairly polite way to say, let me have this thing. It's a good way to pay attention to your dog if they're sliding between you and something else. And then their eating behaviors. I actually saw this on Instagram and sent it to Michelle. I wish I could capture these for these presentations, but it showed a dog eating its food, and it was hitting the bowl so fast when it was eating. I mean, it looked like it was going to hurt itself, and it was eating the food so fast. It was aggressive, and the food was going everywhere. The dog was so intense about getting that food down faster than anything else could. And that's a type of resource guarding. So if you have a dog that has to have a feeder, slow feeder, because they eat way too fast, they could be highly anxious. They could also be a resource guarder. So even though there's a temporary fix of giving them a food bowl that forces them to eat more slowly, you haven't changed their anxiety. You haven't changed what's going on in their emotional state. You have slowed them down, but it would be better if we could figure out why they're eating that way. Why are they anxious? Let's reduce their stress so they can eat their meal without that kind of energy. So let's put them in an environment where they can eat and relax and do it. If you have a dog that takes a bite out of the bowl and rushes to another place and eats it there in a private, they're stressed out, and that is resource guarding. Okay. Ones that you go to take a toy and they double down and they won't give it up, it's resource guarding. They're very uncomfortable. They don't trust that you're going to give it back. Sometimes people who tease dogs with toys, like they tug and won't give it back, or they snatch it away, you're actually teaching the dog to guard the toys and not let you have them. And I see that sometimes with teenage boys. They'll tease and ha 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 and give the dog the toy back, and the dog becomes a guard. So it feels like a game, but maybe not to the dog. So these are all things that are signals to look for. And watch your dog. Have this list out and watch your dog and see, what do they do? And are there times where my dog seems to be guarding that I haven't noticed before? When does my dog seem relaxed around things they have? When do they easily let me, approach them? When do they turn away? When am I allowed to touch things that they have and not? I have a dog right now who is a half Great Dane, half Rottweiler, and he is all about ball. I mean, oh, now he looked at me. I should not have said that out loud. Everything is B-A-L-L. And if I just put my hand kind of near the ball, he's excited, but his whole body goes stiff. And if I reach towards it, he'll nudge when he does not want me to pick up the ball. He'll just nudge my hand away. But when I'm allowed to pick up the ball, he just holds himself still around it, and then I'm allowed to pick it up. But he's very clear. Yes, you can touch the ball. No, you can't touch the ball. It's nice to have those signals. All right. This is just to help you see how it progresses. You get those early signs like a hard stare, body stiffening. The next one is blocking, like, hey, come on, you can't have this. Then you get maybe you get a little lip. Maybe you get some teeth. These are a little harder to see unless you're paying attention. You might get the snap. You might get a muzzle punch. Boop. Okay. And then you'll get the actual bite. What's really funny is so many people say they snapped at me or bit me, came out of nowhere. And Diane and I hear this all the time. It came out of absolutely nowhere. And if we do have film from in camera inside the house, we are able to point out some of these other signals. Sometimes we can ask questions and people can say, oh yeah, they did these. It didn't come out of nowhere. I'm almost sure that maybe 2% of dogs bite out of nowhere and the rest give these signals. But they're so subtle that you just didn't see it. You just missed it. And if you are interested, on YouTube and Instagram, there are dog channels and they'll put videos up where they'll say, did you see the signals? There's one of a man who's petting a dog that put his paws up on the window. The man's petting the dog and then the dog suddenly bites. And it looks like it's out of nowhere. And when they slow it down, you can see every single one of these points of escalation. So dog language is so fast and so subtle that we miss it. But look for it. Pay attention to these slight things. The ones that I think you can catch is the stiffening. When a dog slows down, pay attention. A slow dog is a dog that might bite. Okay, a fast-moving dog, a dog that's moving around and snarling, grrr, I'm like, okay, you're not going to bite me. But a dog goes like this, I'm pretty sure they're going to bite me. They stare at me and move slow, I'm worried. Okay, so that I think is the biggest clue for you.
We probably turn down, I would say on average, 2 dogs a month, 2 Goldens a month, that we get calls where they bit out of the blue for no reason.
Yeah.
And usually there's a child or a younger person involved, which makes perfect sense. Yeah. But we can't bring those dogs in at that point. But we hear that all the time. It's the most common reason that we have to turn down a dog that we can't bring in is because they bit out of the blue for no reason and they missed the signal.
Yep. Yeah, it's so sad. And it's unfortunate because I'll be willing to bet that dog gave many, many signals prior to that single incident as well. There are several other incidents that signals were buried in as well. And the dog was screaming beforehand, I'm trying to tell you I'm gonna bite, and it's tragic. Here's a dog that I worked with. Her name was Bella. Bella is a definite outlier because Bella was a puppy, 4 weeks old when she's 4 weeks old when she started showing this behavior. Okay. She was removed from her mother at 4 weeks and sold by a backyard breeder at 4 weeks old because the backyard breeder wanted to get the mother moving and dried up so she could start breeding her again. So she was sold to a person who was willing to bottle feed her. So already horrible setup. So because she was already removed too early, so that's kind of like the bottle feeding pups who lost their mom or whatever, she didn't get the background with pups and mom and the opportunity to get that socialization in the puppy nest that she needed. So she already had some anxiety as a result. Then she's not socializing and developing property, and she started developing some resource guarding early. It was so severe that she was biting at about 6 weeks. She was starting to snap and bite and push at 6 weeks. And so what we were seeing was that oh, hey, this thing is so sensitive. I'm so sorry. Go back. Come on now. There we go. Was that she was going to be a candidate for being euthanized because a puppy that's showing that aggression that early, people automatically say the puppy does not have a chance. But what we realized for us from this end is that all of it was based on, thanks, Tony, all of it was based on the anxiety of not having stable early life. So we went back and did a bunch of work with anxiety medication and socialization. And we did a bunch of work on abundance. Like, for instance, she used to guard bones to the point of fighting over it with humans. We put bones down all over the house. We got 15 and put them all over the living room. So she couldn't pretty much move anywhere without a bone being present. And at some point she got to, like, bones are not that exciting, and we could pick them up. So we had to rewrite her approach to things she felt were valuable. And she did settle down. We also did muzzle training. We did all kinds of stuff. So the success factor was getting her to desensitize to things that had a huge emotional response for her. Anything that she was like, oh my God, I'm going to guard this. We had to give her so much of it that she didn't care about it anymore. Okay. Oop. There we go. So how do you prevent it? Well, we've talked about the first step, which is early intervention. Okay. Early intervention means get it before they start. That's what we're going to hit right now. Smart management. We said one thing that's about smart management, which is put food bowls away, and then building trust. And we're going to go through this part kind of fast because I think you know these things. And I'm really sorry about this program. It's me. It's the driver. There we go. Aha. Okay. This, I really hope you'll use this with the new dog in your household. This goes back to even the first webinar we did about integrating dogs into your home. This is the stuff you'd put up for any dog coming in anyway. So when you bring a new dog in, you create places for the dog to eat, places for the dog to stay. This prevents resource guarding. So if you have more than one dog, you're going to have separate feeding areas for them. You're going to make sure that those feeding areas are secure with baby gates or with crates or shut doors that the dogs cannot pass through. So there's no way that dogs are going to at all contact each other when they're eating. And then all food bowls, all toys, all bones, anything that's edible is going to be secured, and they won't have it around them when they're together in any way. The meal time needs to be calm. So when you call the dogs for mealtime, it's not going to be, who wants dinner? Oh my gosh, are you hungry? Come on, let's have dinner time. You're not going to amp them up for dinner so that they're bouncing around, because that's going to trigger the hyper arousal that will feed the resource guarding. So don't start the process of prepping dinner in a way that the dogs are circling you like sharks and getting excited, because that's when they can have a good fight too. You drop a piece of food in that, they're going to have a fight at your feet. Don't let the dogs in the kitchen while you're prepping your food. They should not be right with you when you're prepping their dinner. So prep quietly, don't amp them up, feed them in separate areas, and take them in calmly to their areas. When they're done eating, those bowls get put away, not where they can guard. So I had clients put the bowls just like right on the counter, right there, and the dogs would still guard the area because they could see the bowls. The next thing is the physical barriers. Make sure you have baby gates to separate the dogs. Make sure that they can't knock them down. Use crates, safe havens. Create bedroom spaces for the dogs where they can decompress away from each other. Give them their own little cozy spot that the other dog is not allowed to go into. And that's where they get to have their special toys. Those things reduce anxiety, and you let the dogs decompress, and you'll have less competition between them. When the dogs are allowed to be together in space, when they're, this is when you're bringing a new dog in, or when you've got any competition between dogs, when they're in the same space, then you're going to supervise it. Okay? You're going to have them either on leash if they need to be, but you're going to monitor regardless. So if you're in the kitchen cooking and you've allowed the two dogs into the living room, that's really not a good choice, because that's when things happen. So if your dogs are in the living room, you're in the living room. That'll really reduce the opportunity for bad things to happen. A lot of people are worried that the dogs are missing out if they're being separated that way. They're not. What's happening is they're learning to be calm, and they're decompressing. They're not getting stressed out, and they're staying level. It's reducing their anxiety. And when they do have time with the other dog, they're at a lower arousal state, so bad things don't happen. And then finally, set up the environment. Make sure that you've got watering stations. Okay, they have multiple, so the dogs aren't standing there in line trying to get water together. Making sure the toys, when their toys are ready, if you're going to allow them to have toys in the same space and you're monitoring that they're enough, that they're not vying for over them, or if they're really resource guarding, they have toys in their own spaces. Making sure that you have more than one bed, or enough beds for the dogs to be on and to make choices and move around, and that you don't have places where they get stuck. And I mean, like, if you have a couch and a really narrow space where your coffee table is, if the two dogs are passing right there and they get really trapped, that's another great place for an altercation, especially if they decide to guard you and your affection or your attention. So keep an eye out for tight spaces where they might guard you or guard the space. Those are all ways to manage the flow of the space they're in. All of that is preventative. All of it's fairly easy. And we have a saying in training, management fails. So no matter how much management you do, the moment you say, it'll be fine, that's when you end up calling us, because it wasn't fine. Meaning, it's fine until you blow it off. So if you set up management, don't say, it looks like it's going to be okay, and then reverse your own rules. I'll just throw toys in, they'll be okay. They've been fine this whole time. Oops. Or, I'll let them eat in the kitchen together. It'll be okay. Oops. Or, yeah, they can have their bones tonight together. Oops. Just keep your rules. When you have the rules, just keep your own rules.
One of the things that we've seen happen a lot is people bring a new dog into their home, and their current dog, who never resource guarded before, now all of a sudden is resource guarding. And we've had that happen multiple times. And we've had people get bit because of the resident dog, and they weren't expecting, because their resident dog never guarded before.
Right.
And so, we tell them they've never lived together. Just because your dog lives with other dogs doesn't mean it's lived with this dog.
Yep.
And, to still practice these behaviors. But people are pretty surprised to see those types of changes in their own dog that they think they know or not think, but, that they've known for so many years.
Yep. Always assume that you need to do all this stuff. It's much easier to set it up and then undo it than it is to have to work from now your dogs have had a fight. This slide is just a reminder for folks who didn't take the first or didn't attend the first webinar on multi-dogs, or is not here for the verbal. So I'm going to just kind of move past this. We've talked about this. All right. So now we're going to talk about the training. Now, these are actually not for you, as in you have to do this. You can have a trainer come in to do this, but I want you to know what to expect if you have a trainer help you. And that is that you want to have a trainer that is going to be working on trading and working with your dog's emotions instead of punishing your dog for guarding. Okay, because if you punish the dog for guarding, the dog will guard more and be far more likely to bite, to escalate to the biting stage. Okay, so the first level of helping your dog manage their emotions around guarding is to teach them to trade. And when you trade, just like when you're a kid, you want to trade for equal or better value, right? So like if you want to trade for, a one car for another Hot Wheels car, you don't trade down, you trade equal or better. So when your dog has something that you want to trade for, you can't give him something lousy to do it. So I had a dog that would steal my bras, which was always special because they would do it when I had guests, steal the bras and run through the living room, special, and would not give them up. And so that was high value for the dog. And at the moment, it was really high value for me to get it back. I would not offer him a piece of kibble for that because it wasn't going to be a trade. The only thing he would trade for that was a piece of hot dog. Okay. So I would keep hot dog in the fridge so I could trade with that because he would do it fairly regularly. I also learned to manage my household and keep all my laundry in a basket he couldn't get into. So not only did I learn to trade, I also learned to manage my environment. Okay, do both. Trading is really great. Dogs do trade if you offer something they want. So if you're trying to trade and they don't want to, they're telling you that you're not offering high enough value. And it's very simple. You just say trade and you offer the thing and they will take it from you and they will drop the thing. Now, if they drop the treat or let's say they have a sock or my bra and they drop it, they take the treat and they go right back and snatch it, which is very common. It's because they have outsmarted you. What you have to do is you offer it and you move the treat so they have to move their head after they've dropped the guarded object. So it's going to go like this. Trade, they drop the object, and before they get it, you move their head here, and then you pick up the item before they get a chance to come back and snatch it. Okay. Cindy.
Yes, I have a dog that is guarding a tablet.
A tablet.
Yep. He started about 2 months ago and he was fine. He likes to watch the videos of the dogs playing in the pool and everything. And last week he guarded it and he growled at his sister. Then my husband went over to get it and he growled at my husband. So how do I make a trade for a tablet?
It's the same. What does he absolutely love in terms of like food items? What makes him just joyous?
Hot dogs. Hot dogs.
Same thing. So you approach, okay? You toss a hot dog right here at him, between him and the tablet, let him have it. Okay, so he enjoys it. Then you toss one a little bit away from the tablet so he goes to get that. Then you toss one a little bit further away so he goes to get that, far enough away so you can pick up the tablet. Okay.
Okay.
And this is something I want everyone to understand. You use the food to move the dog away from the item so you don't have to rush and grab it and get hurt because you've grabbed it. Okay. Also, you don't want your dog to feel cheated. Be generous with the trade. Really generous. Okay.
Okay.
So, offer, hey, it's kind of like playing poker. Hey, here's what I'm going to ante with my big piece of hot dog. Ooh, cool. All right. And then you lure him to a different spot and take the tablet.
Okay.
Then because he's guarding it, take a break from the tablet.
That's what I did. When I finally got my hands on it, I closed it up and put it up. I said, no more tablet for you.
Yeah. And there's some evidence now that screens are not good for dogs in the same way that screens are not good for young children, where it's kind of addictive and it's not good for vision and stuff. So there's more evidence that's saying probably shouldn't let your dog watch screens for very long, and maybe not at all, because it kind of does that dopamine thing. And so maybe he's more susceptible to it, and it is causing his kind of dopamine to fire and he's getting addicted to it.
Oh, he absolutely loves watching the dogs on the video.
Yeah.
And then he sees a dog on the TV and he just starts watching them and licking the TV and everything. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it might be a whole lot. I think they'll find it later. When we did laser pointers and then we found out that was really bad because it made dogs obsessive. I think they're going to find out it's real similar. So I would say maybe you have to cut him off.
Well, I cut him off last week. I was like, no.
Can't do that. Yeah.
Can't do that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Was there another hand up?
Debbie, I'm Bob. I'm Julie's husband.
Hi, Bob.
And I've really enjoyed these. Thank you very much. The question I have is what you were just talking about with the trade issue with the hot dog. What causes the dog to then not think that, well, if I do this, I'm going to get a hot dog again? You've talked about that before too. Why?
There is a danger of that if you set up the situation where you get a hot dog every time. So let's say go with the tablet thing. Let's say now after we've done the first time where, okay, I've used the hot dog and I've taken the tablet away, right? Next time he gets the tablet, he's starting to guard it again. I lure him away. If I keep doing that, he might think, cool, I'm going to guard the second I see the tablet so I can get hot dog, right?
Right.
The way to prevent that is after about the second or third time when I've got him away, I start training. I start using cues. I start doing things like, once we see the tablet, I'm going to use a cue like break. And then break means you have to give the tablet up and then you get the hot dog. So after we start the luring, then we're going to start doing some training, right? So if it's habitual, we're going to build training in. That way we keep it from becoming a vending machine.
Okay, that
Yeah.
answers my question.
Great question.
I have one more question. I don't want to hog up the time, but
Go ahead.
we
Let's do
have
it.
4 golden retrievers.
Great.
We have two goldens, and then there's 2 field goldens or red ones.
Uh-huh.
Our red ones tend to exhibit behavior that is not like a golden. I mean, they constantly are just antagonizing the others, like you were talking about, standing in front of them and just putting his body there, waiting to exactly. Is that common for that type of golden?
Yeah, the varietal, the different varieties were used a little bit differently, right? And those field ones, they have a little bit more drive for the hunt. And so they have a little bit more of that na 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 in them. And so let's just put it, they have a little more devil in their eyes. And so, it is. Yeah, you bet.
Okay.
And so if you look at the different varieties, they have a slightly different drive for a reason. And so, yes, those field ones, they do have a little more ornery in them.
Yeah. Well, I blame Michelle because she didn't tell us that coming into this.
Hey, Michelle's a great salesman.
She knows I'm teasing her. Thank you, Debbie.
You betcha. You betcha. Was there another hand, Diane?
No, I think Paulette's having some issues with her.
Okay. I'm sorry, Paulette.
If she does have a question, she's going to write it in for me.
Okay, great. So just interrupt me when you're ready.
Will do.
Okay. So positive training is first trade and making sure it's fun. Like it's not trade. And then the dog's like, okay, it's like, hey, let's trade. Yay, this is fun. It actually has to be fun and enjoyable and have a positive association, or the dog will hear you say trade and go, this isn't something I want. It needs to feel enjoyable and needs to leave the dog with a positive energy. So I'm going to go with do's and don'ts. Okay. So when you're doing this training with the dogs, stick with the idea that it's really teaching and it's really helping your dog reduce their stress. And you're doing it for the dog's health and enjoyment. You're not trying to punish them. Okay. So really, if you're looking at the way you go about it, it's more like doing a trade game. It's not telling the dog they're bad and you want them to let this thing go. It's very hard sometimes when they have something you really don't want them to have and then have to switch into trade. I know it is, but use your acting skills and switch, because if you can, you're going to be working on that dog going, okay, I can let this thing go. And you'll be moving, more and more towards your dog, not taking things they shouldn't and releasing those emotions. Okay. If you're angry, just get the trade done and move on. Don't try to do any training. Let the dog go somewhere else, relax, let that go before you do anything else. Because being stressed and frustrated because your dog is doing it again or has ruined something you care about, you're just not in the right place to deal with it. So get the trade done, give the dog the trade, the treat, whatever you need to do, and go mourn whatever they've destroyed, and then later come back. I had a dog that had a knack for stealing things that I cared about, and she grabbed a book from the early 1800s that my mom had given me. It was a French fairy tale book that she gave me when I got my French degree, and she shredded it and left it in the backyard. And when I went to go get the art that she had in her mouth from the book and trade it for her, it was hard not to be really angry with her. And I did get it traded, and there was no chance I was going to be able to do anything else with her. So I got the pieces, I picked up the yard, I fed her dinner, I put her in her crate with a bone and let it go. And then later worked on training. And it was hard because that was something I really treasured. That's part of what, having children is part of what having dogs is. You just sometimes have to take the hit. And that was one of them. So sorry to bring that, but that's true. Let's go to next. All right. How do we treat and modify these guarding behaviors? Now we're talking about medical stuff. Okay. We're looking at science. We're looking at measuring progress. We're looking at what do we have to do if we need medication. Oops. Again. And we're looking now what trainers do. So when your trainer comes in to work with you on this, we're doing something, we're working with your dog's emotions, but we're also working with how they learn. And what we're doing with things like trade or drop it or leave it, and with them not being upset when somebody walks past their food bowl, is we're conditioning them to accept an approach, to accept people, to be okay, and to relax even when they're stressed. And that's technically called counter conditioning and desensitization. So what we're doing is we're trying to change an emotional response to an event. So if your dog is always growling when someone walks past their bowl, we will go and we will work with them to accept that when someone walks past their bowl, good things happen instead. We'll have you walk past their bowl and drop treats as you go by. So they're thinking, when someone walks by my bowl, I have to guard it because I might lose it. But what happens instead is you walk by and it rains treats. And they're like, wait, this is totally different. That's not what I'm expecting. And that's the counter conditioning. They're getting the opposite happening of what they expect, and it changes their emotion. And at the same time, it is desensitizing them to the person walking by. So we will be setting up plans and protocols for something like that, for whatever it is they're guarding and how they're guarding, to flip the script for them so they can learn to get past their fear of loss and their prediction that bad things will happen. So that's really how the trainer works with your dog to get them past those hang-ups around somebody, around their things. The next thing we'll do with trade is we'll start with big trades, and then we'll work lower and lower to smaller and more simple trades till they get to the point where they will trust you to trade just because you asked, and not necessarily with a big reward. We want them to be able to offer you something you've asked because they trust you, meaning you're on a walk and they pick up something you know they can't have, and they will give it to you. Now, you might still want to pay them, just because randomly, if you pay them, that keeps them going. But we want them to, and you to have such a tight bond that if you say, hey, I need that, they say, well, okay. And that is an amazing bond. It's safety as well. It's a way to have them look at you as kind of the parent figure that really that relationship should be. And so we'll help build that trade into a bond that flows back and forth. So we'll set it up. So it's this step-by-step protocol that starts out with you have an item on and give you something huge and amazing, and you will trade, all the way down to you trust me and I trust you, and it becomes easy. So we shape that for you. And that's the next step. Oh, new hands. Paulette and Kathy.
Just Kathy, I think.
Oh, yes, Kathy. Kathy, what's up?
So I'm going to back up a couple slides on the scattering the treats as you walk by when they're eating.
Yep.
Could that maybe at the beginning, I guess, cause a little more anxiety as they rush to get the treats so they can hurry up and get back to their bowl?
Oh, well, when you're not actually scattering, you're trying to toss it in the bowl.
In the bowl. Okay, there we
Yeah,
go.
so that's fine.
Okay.
I'm glad you asked me to clarify that. So
Okay.
yeah, so rather than doing a scatter feed where they're like, what the heck? The what the heck is you're actually putting it in the bowl. So if we
Yep.
have to,
Okay.
we'll get a really wide thing. If you're, if your aim is terrible, if they're really guarding the bowl, we get a bigger thing to drop it into. But
Yeah, it's the aim thing. I'd have to have a
yeah,
really
the aim
big
thing.
thing.
Or if you bending over makes them crazy, or if you reaching in is dangerous, we want a bigger object to toss it into. But that's a really good observation. Like if they have to go out to get food and then come back and guard, it could cause more anxiety.
Okay.
Very fine point. Okay, here's what you would see from a trainer. Hopefully you would see a step-by-step plan, and it could take as long as what I'm seeing here, somewhere between 1 and 10 weeks, and then the maintenance plan. It is a slow process to work on resource guarding. You cannot rush this. When you rush it, you heighten the anxiety, and then you are working against your own progress. So this is a go the speed the dog can go program. That doesn't mean the trainer needs to be there every time. Often the trainer can set you up with the protocol that you do step by step and then just check in with them. But really, it is going to take you a couple of months, maybe 3 months to work through a training plan that involves resource guarding, just depending on the severity. And we're going to do these, distance approach training. That's with dropping the treats. We're going to talk about trading. We're going to work on some leave-its and leave-its that feel good for your dog. We're going to make sure that the dog is going through very positive responses. And if you ever see that the dog is slowing down or starting to have some stress, then we have to work backwards to go forwards. So, you kind of see that fluctuate. I worked with one dog for 6 months, and it was exhausting, but it turned around, and this was a poodle mix, and she was biting hard. She was really hurting people, and we got to the point where she could let people walk past her bowl and not dart out and try to hurt them. And it got to the point where the owner was actually crying when she was doing well. It can be very frustrating, but it can also be really rewarding. And then you want to make sure that the trainer has some progress markers. Like we actually know, what is this dog doing? We want to make sure that they are relaxed. We want to make sure that when this stuff is going on, you're not seeing a stiff dog. You're seeing a relaxed dog. You want to make sure that you have some time goals. Like how long does it take the dog to trade? Like, are they holding on to the item and pondering, or are they trading easily within a couple of seconds? You want some success criteria. You want to see, is the dog, when you request the trade, do they stiffen it first, or do they flow right into the trade? So you really want the trainer and you to work out what markers are you looking for in the process, so that as you're working, you're going, yep, this is working. See, look, hey, that's cool. Or you've got some things that you can go, oh, hey, I need to slow down and help and go back to my trainer and get some advice on how to do this, because it's clear the dog's not doing well. The really good clue is if I'm walking past the bowl and the dog stops eating, I know that they're uncomfortable. That's a really good one. All right. Max. Max was a wingnut. He was such a sweet dog. Jumpy, cute, loving, great dog, and absolute terror around his food bowl. Not only growling and guarding, he would snap, and he tore your clothes. He would grab clothes and rip them. He didn't draw blood, but he was getting there. Nobody could be near his food bowl during feeding time. The family had gotten to the point where they would put the bowl on the floor and push it into place with a broom so he could get his food. After we went through 6 weeks of training, they could put the bowl down right next to him and he would take it, and they could pick the bowl up and put it away right next to him without any problems. And we did the typical. We just did some management. We made sure that he had his own feeding area that no one interrupted. We definitely did the slow desensitization, and we made it so that he had abundance and he could count on that food was not going to be taken from him. In other words, we did the treats as we walked by. We started with putting only a little bit of food in his bowl, and then we would add food as people walked by. So it looked to him like food was kind of a flowing meal, like lots of food came. Then we would do things like his food bowl would be empty, and we would have people put food in while he was in his place. He could watch people put food in his bowl, and he would learn that as people went by, his bowl was magically being filled, and he could see it happening, and then he would be released to go to his bowl. So we did a lot of things like that. And then we worked on trade, and then we did some leave-its too. We had to work really hard on his male owner on the leave-its, because male had his dad had this huge booming voice, and so he would just, Max, leave it, and it was so scary to Max. So we had to work on him saying, leave it, that was harder. But we did it within 8 weeks, of training, that we were able to get Max to relax around his bowl, and after several years, he never rebounded. So it was consistency that made the difference. The family all pitched in and followed the protocol. That was a fun one. Okay, when to ask for a trainer. If the dog is bitten, snapped at, put mouth on, or really scared somebody, you probably ought to have a trainer. If you're starting to see an escalation, you're really just seeing an increase and you're getting worried, ask for a trainer, get a trainer. If your dog is starting to guard more than one thing, they were just guarding their food, but now they're starting to guard the stairs for some reason, get a trainer. If they're guarding for affection, they're guarding a certain person or a place on the couch, but they're guarding multiple things, get a trainer. If you're overwhelmed, that's a good one, get a trainer. Anything that you feel is unsafe, definitely have a trainer. I think really the measurement is, if you feel like you can't handle it, if you feel like even you have this niggling feeling that someone might get hurt, you really need a trainer, because handling it when you're afraid or you're emotional, it just pours more emotion into the situation. It's like putting fuel on a fire. Your dog senses your emotions. And so if you're trying to help and fix it with your emotions high, it's just going to increase your dog's anxiety. So that kind of makes it worse. Obviously, if you're a foster, at the very slightest indication of resource guarding, you should be on the phone with your team and getting some help from GRR. Because resource guarding is one of the main reasons dogs get given back. Immediately when a dog growls at a family member, people are like, dog's got to go, because they don't know, is this the beginning of a dog that bites? And that fear makes people just dump dogs. And really, resource guarding, even though it's scary, it's fairly fixable, and it is a pretty clear protocol. So if you see any of that in your fosters, please reach out immediately. Don't go, it's probably fine. Don't try to fix it yourself. Involve your team. Alyssa.
Hi.
Hey.
I was wondering, one of our family's dogs is a resource guarder, very manageable most of the time, but I guess I'm wondering in general, and particularly given that, what guarding affections looks like. With our two dogs, what I've noticed, and neither one is aggressive with the other physically about it, but they both will, I don't know if it's called guarding affections. They can find a way of, and they both do it at different times. They'll sort of nudge or squeeze in to get closer to me, to, and push the other one a little farther away. Neither one seems to react badly when the other does it, but I'm just curious what guarding affections looks like, and in our context, whether I ought to be leery of that, if there's any way of managing that, what would be the way to handle it?
Yeah, you nailed it. That is, it's competition for affection or attention. Is that, and they haven't escalated to where they're like, pushing and biting or snapping at each other, but they are pushing between and kind of, butting the other one out to get your attention. And so, yes, they are guarding a little bit. But it's just not ugly, right? And so what you do is if you are petting one dog and the other one kind of pushes in between and forces you off that dog, then really what you do is return to the dog you were petting, so that you're like, hey, no, I was petting dog A. I'm going to continue to pet dog A. Do that for a minute. And then the dog that asked for attention, then you can give them some attention. After you reestablish the initial contact, then you can give the second one some attention. If you scold that second dog, that's going to increase that second dog's anxiety, right? So now you're increasing that need to push in. So and if you stop petting the first dog A, then the dog A is like, well, hey, wait, I'm getting affection stolen from me. So you need to continue petting that dog. But if you scold or punish the second dog, you're actually increasing their anxiety. So it's best if you just keep going with this one. Good dog. Yes, yes, yes. Hold on. It's your turn. I got you now. And you pet them both.
I love it. Thank you.
If you can get them both to sit on two sides and then get them both, kind of orderly and pet, that's even better, because then you're having them ask by sitting. If you want attention, sit. And I know you're asking and it's polite. So that's another step to go for.
Thank you.
You bet. There's a really neat technique called constructional affection treatment. And what they do, the premise is the dog is pushing for affection. If you don't give them some, you're increasing their anxiety, which increases the rude behavior. So it's the same idea. You kind of put your hand on their chest where their vagus nerve is, and you just set it there. Even if you're not giving them all the attention, it calms them down for a second, and then you can give them the attention. So you could do that too, where you pet dog A and you just place your hand on the chest of dog B while you're doing it. That kind of calms them down, and then you would give dog B a little more attention. So it's the same idea of just saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm not giving up what I'm doing here. You can wait for a second, but I'm also not cutting you off.
Oh, I like that. That sounds so reassuring.
Gentle, right? And it's acknowledging that they need something, and it's not putting them in a shameful place too. I mean, bad dog, I don't like that. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So you've got lots of support, as always, in this organization. You've got the resources that Michelle and et al. Have put together for you. You've got your portal and all the training materials that your group have for you. You've got the videos that Michelle has the links for. You've got your own small groups that you're in. As adopters, Michelle has things for you there. So she is your leader and your point for that. Rely on them. They're just such good quality. We do recommend a couple of books. There's a book called Mine by Jean Donaldson that's actually a little older, but it is so good. It's not very thick. It's about this big. That if you do have, significant or even moderate resource guarding in your household, it's a great book. And if you want to do any training of dogs, it's a great book for that. Culture Clash by the same author is a really good book for just understanding dogs in general. And then Control Unleashed is a great book if you have a dog that is a bit of a guarder, but they're also like really hyper and maybe impulsive, and maybe that's why they're guarding. That book has a lot of focus activities you can use to keep your dog busy. So that's a really good book. So there's just some good things for you to reach out to. This is our contact information. If you want to reach out to us, you may. We would love to hear from you. Remember that you do have emergency protocols through GRR. So if there are things you're worried about, you've got a guarder that's biting, that you need any of that stuff, the incident reports, emergency folks, follow Gold Ribbons protocols and work with them. Then, ta-da, I'm going to give you your key takeaways. Your key takeaways is work to recognize what's going on in your dog's body language and what they're trying to tell you. Watch your dog. Watch for context cues as well. Prevent guarding as much as you can. And if you think there is guarding that's going on, work with the management and the environment to lower the opportunities for gardening to happen. Gardening, if your dog is gardening, let me know, for gardening to happen. Always make safety first thing. And as we're going to holidays, and we're going to talk about the holiday stuff, guarding can happen with your guests as they come in. Your dog can become very jealous and guarding of new people coming in. And so prep your house prior to your guests coming. And that really what they're doing is they're indicating to you that they're anxious and they don't feel secure. And so if you can set the house up that helps them feel secure, then you're doing right by your dog. We're going to go to Q&A in just a second, but I want to say if you are ready to go, this is a good time to go. Thank you for being on this with us. Again, Diane and I absolutely love doing these webinars. We thank you for being here. Diane does have some announcements about our fall class schedule. We do some live and virtual classes. So I'm going to give her just a minute or two to tell you about the classes we have coming up. And then we'll go back to the Q&A. And the Q&A will be fairly short because we had lots of cues throughout the presentation. But Diane, do you want to hop on for a second?
Sure, sure. So yes, I'm so excited to start talking about our classes. One of the big ones that we do, because we get a lot of people that are dealing with this, is anybody dealing with leash reactivity with their dogs, or even crazy dogs on leash. I've got two that are crazy. So we have a great class that we do. It is with leash reactivity. It is a 4-week class, and it's a combination of both virtual and in-person. We have one night a week where we will do the virtual, and that is kind of our practice at home sessions, where we give you tools so that you can practice what you can do to help your dog start to really learn to walk with you on leash, because that's our goal when we're looking at reactivity class. It's really not necessarily stopping the reaction so much, because there's so many exciting things in the world, but giving you tools and opportunities to work with your dog so that they can make different choices. And that's what we're really looking for in reactivity class, is how to teach your dog versus taking you down a hill after a squirrel. What can they do instead? And really what it is them looking to you for direction. So we are teaching you how to teach your dogs to look to you for direction when they're out on leash and really walking with you. So the virtual part of it is where we start giving you the tools, and then we do an in-person session. And this is a really small group where we meet in a park and we practice those tools with other dogs in a situation where it's all a controlled environment, or let's say 95%, because we are outside and anything can happen, but we do it in a way that is safe, that allows you to really practice with individuals that are trying to work with their dogs as well. So that class starts, hang on a second here, it starts October 9th and runs through November 2nd. And we will get this information to you on how to sign up and everything. So that's the first one that's coming. Then at the beginning of the year, this is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time and been working on, is doing virtual classes. And these are like workouts so that you have an opportunity to do fun things with your dogs. And it's a 45-minute class, really fast class to do, practicing things, not only your basic cues like sits and downs and all of that, but integrating fun games as well. But for me, I always like to have something that kind of pushes me to do it. So like, signing up for workout classes, if I sign up for them, then I do my workouts. And if I don't sign up, I don't do my workouts. So this is an opportunity to do practice with your dogs. We were talking about in the workshop tonight about building trust with your dogs, and the best way to do that is to do things like training or games with them, because what you're doing is you're asking them to do weird things. We think a scent is normal, but a dog goes, "What are you asking me to do?" So you're asking your dog to do weird things. They have to figure out what it is we're asking them, and then be willing to do it and get rewarded for it. So this is an opportunity to do all of this with your dog in a really fun way. So Mondays are going to be fun days where we're going to do a lot of games and activities there again to build the bond with your dog and get them again to really want to relate with you and respond to you. So, you know, the things that we'll be doing will help you with recall and will help you with getting their attention and getting them to move away from things and all the things that you're dealing with in the real world. And then the other classes, Wednesday is Zen Day. And what we'll be doing on Wednesdays is practicing calm behaviors, because I know a lot of people, and my dogs need the practice too, how to really teach your dogs to relax, because it's something that is not natural to them unless they want to do it or they're going to sleep. So practicing not only how to teach your dog what it really means to settle. I know a lot of people teach their dogs how to stay, which is great and is kind of a precursor, but the problem is you're holding your dog in place when you ask for a stay. So what we're looking to do is not only get them to hold the position, but then to melt in that position and really relax in that position. So we're going to do a lot of practice, and I will show you how to do this with them and then practice with them, so that if you do go out with them and take them someplace, to dinner or coffee or wherever, they really are learning how to relax in those environments versus just laying there hoping that somebody's going to come by, with something, and that they can either bark at them or ask them for a pet or, just walk out the door with them. So those are coming in January. And again, we'll get those dates to you when those classes start, and you'll be able to sign up online, or you'll be able to contact us to get signed up for those classes. It's really easy to do. And yeah, so I think that's it. Did I miss anything that I'm not thinking of?
You can email Diane at diane@cspotbehave.com. And you can text her, and I have the number on this slide. It's 512-456-8660. So you'll get the handout for this, and her information will be on there too. So you can bug her if you want to. It's good.
Me. Yeah.
Diane, I'm really interested in that reactive dog class.
Oh,
How
it was
many
so good.
dogs are going to be in that session?
So for the virtual, we can do anywhere from 4 to 6 people in the virtual sessions. And if we have enough people, I'll do 2 sessions then. And the reason that we kind of limit it on that one is just so I can see what you're doing.
Yeah.
For the in-person, we will do no more than 6.
Mhm.
That's the maximum that we'll do. So again, that way you get personalized attention, and it's not so many,
We're doing two sessions of 6.
2 sessions.
Yeah.
So again, we'll, but each session will have no more than 6 dogs in it. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want it to be a rugby scrum. That's not what we're after.
yeah, I'm pretty good at juggling, but there does come a certain point, and like I said, I want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to work, as well as my being able to make sure everybody is moving forward. And I try to make it as fun as possible. We do a lot of games and fun things too, but it really is focused on your dog's learning to make those choices. That's the key. We utilize some cues, but you'll be surprised because we're not going to cue as much as you think we will.
Yeah. This is not military. We want your dogs to actually develop tolerance and be able to manage.
Yeah. So anyways, yes. So again, Diane at cspotbehave.com, and it's DIANE, the boring spelling of Diane, no extra I's or N's or anything. Or my number is 512-456-8660. So you can reach me either way. And I will make sure we get that information out to anybody who's interested.
Yay. And really that's it for the show. And we're going to stay on for anyone who has questions. We absolutely love having you, and it is 8:20. So please, if you have other things you'd like to do, we would love for you to run away and have a good evening. And then if you have stuff you want to ask. If you want to talk about your own dogs, go for it. But have a great night, everybody.
Yes, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you guys so much. I have one, it's not really a question, I guess more of a comment for anybody that's going to stay on, because it was something that I had to deal with just in my own experience of having a very severe resource guarder and putting my emotion on when we had to take away toys because I had a multi-dog household, and thinking, oh, how hard it was going to be, how sad, they won't get to play with the toys, he's going to have to be separated. It was really, really difficult for us to accept our emotion and how we felt to manage the household with our dogs. And we ended up having to keep toys put away for 5 years. We did not have stuffies out. And then we decided to get a puppy, and then it was like, oh, we didn't think it through before the puppy came. What are we going to do with toys? But it had been 5 years. And so we very slowly introduced toys back. Now it'll be 2 years in December that we've had toys back. And because we did it so slowly and methodically, and he's matured, and we still manage. It worked out great. But for the 5 years we never had toys out, he was fine. The other dogs were fine. Nobody lived a depraved, miserable life because there weren't stuffies everywhere.
Well, and Michelle, you don't have to deprive them of toys. There can be ways you
we
can
kept
set it
them
up so
separate, right?
we have separate
toys in his space, but we also really did have to limit his toys because he would shred and eat things. It wasn't just the guarding was the problem.
Right. And we would have to set up things like, dogs that are shredders because they need to. We'd provide shredding and not toys. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we found like really hard rubber things that Breck decided those were his babies.
Nice.
And they weren't the typical soft, cute bunnies and things. It was hard rubber, whatever, that he still, but now we learned the hard way introducing a new toy, because Cabo gets so excited and a new toy is like the best thing ever. That then got Breck over aroused about that particular toy.
Right.
So now we have to introduce a new toy to Cabo when Breck is not around, when Breck is in his space and he doesn't see Cabo have the crazy interaction with the toy. And then by the next morning, it's not the new toy anymore. And so Breck can come out and the new toy's there and it's not a thing. So we made that mistake once and then we never made it again, of creating kind of that frenzy, because we didn't, Cabo created it, but we learned that was a problem. So I just want to say, like, for people that do have a resource guarder, we have to take our emotions out of it and not think about, and it's hard. I do it all the time. I humanize my dogs. And so, I know that's the natural thing, but they will be okay. I mean, they are going to be okay if we have to manage the environment or do things like you guys are recommending with all these things, like putting them in a different space or using gates, using crates, whatever it is, they'll be fine. And I don't know if Breck would still we feed him separately. We have no idea if he would still resource guard during feeding time, but there's no reason to test it because he's fine going in his room to eat by himself. He doesn't need an audience to watch him eat. He's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
And on the toy thing, Europeans think we're nuts. Americans are crazy. They're first of all, they do not buy the toys for dogs that we buy. Second of all, they don't buy toys that squeak because squeaking toys cause obsession, just like the laser pointers do. And they don't have toys that have all the weird things on them that dogs can swallow and get hurt. They have kind of they're much more like the retriever I forgot what they're called, but what do you remember what they're called, Diane? The things you throw in the water.
Oh, like bumpers.
Like the
Bumpers.
buoy.
I get my brain. But yeah, they're much more like bumpers. I mean, they don't have these,
Yeah.
strange toys, and they sure as heck don't have clothes for dogs. And so there's a whole bunch of things when they look at what Americans do with their dogs, and they're like, oh, and toys are one of them. And so, dogs really don't have to have toys, but they certainly do have to have interaction. And so as long as you are interacting with your dogs and you're providing some kind of enrichment through interaction, they're going to be just fine. I love your point, Michelle, about your own emotions, because I had a garter, Mary, and she guarded everything. And I have a Yorkie that loves toys. And so I always felt so bad for the Yorkie because we just couldn't have the toys. And you're right, your own emotions get in the way. I felt so bad for the Yorkie. And then I found out, you know what? She doesn't care that much about him, actually, because I got her toys after Mary passed away. And she was like, oh, okay. Here I am feeling terrible for you. But then when I provide them, she's like, hey.
It's the FOMO. It's the FOMO, which is really hard. Yeah.
Exactly.
A lot of times it has nothing to do with the toy and everything about the fact that it's the other dog that
the dog had it.
The toy.
Yep.
They do the swap, all the time. It's like, oh no, this one, nope, that one's good. Nope, that one's good. Yeah.
Yep. I didn't mention in the slideshow that dogs can guard everything. I've had dogs guard their own vomit when
We've had that
because they want to eat that. I've had dogs guard their own feces, even though they weren't going to eat it. They just needed to guard it. I've had dogs guard, the front door, back door. I've had them guard, their couch. They've had them guard their owners. I had one dog guard the toilet from the owner.
That's a no-go.
That was a fun one because it wasn't that they were drinking the water. I was thinking maybe they just like the ice cold water. We never figured out why the toilet was his, but we did eventually get him to let his owner use it. Just all kinds of things. And so who knows why they decide some things are worth guarding, but it's all the same principle. No matter what, when you get down to it, the way you work through guarding is always the same. And so that makes it kind of easy to work through, as long as you are keeping the dog's emotions low and keep the arousal low and you're managing the anxiety. Guarding is pretty straightforward.
So we've seen a little bit of it just in our own experience, but do dogs outgrow resource guarding?
I don't think it has anything to do with development.
Okay.
So I would say no. I do think that adolescence can really exacerbate it, because adolescence is already a high anxiety time. And I do think some senior dogs can develop guarding because they are starting to be confused about things. So I've seen some dogs that they've gotten some dementia. They can also guard things. And I have seen that medication for anxiety helps with guarding, because guarding is anxiety. They're worried about losing something.
That's one of the things. We don't bring a dog in that has known red flags, but sometimes we don't know. So the dog's in, now we find out this dog's a resource guarder. And and a lot of people haven't really dealt with it. And one of the most common things is people say they won't accept a dog that has aggression. And being a resource guarder doesn't necessarily mean that they're aggressive.
Correct.
But we get asked this question a lot on the matchmaking team. Well, is this going to last? Is this going to be forever? And I say, well, first of all, we don't know, but we should assume that, yes, this is something that you're always going to have to manage. But I don't know if that's a statistic or if it's a thing. Do they? And, these are mostly adult dogs. We don't see it very often in puppies, although we have.
In a puppy, it's a massive red flag.
Yeah, we have no idea what their background is when they come in as an adult. We had a 6-month-old puppy that came in that was a resource guarder. They didn't tell us was a resource guarder, and he ended up biting 3 times within a couple of months. And we deemed that he was not adoptable, but we found a program where somebody was willing to take him to train him in drug detection because he had such a high toy drive.
Cool.
And, we didn't want to euthanize an 8-month-old puppy, but we also knew that he wasn't going to go to the average pet owner.
Yeah.
So he's doing great work now in San Antonio with drug detection. But he was 6 months old and he had 3 pretty significant bites.
Ouch. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a trainer, a really well-known trainer, Dr. Sue Sternberg. She's a PhD in ethology. And she's written some new, really neat work. Just came out in, I think it was Journal of Animal Behavior, I think, about her premise being that all aggression is actually coming from resource guarding.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing because, in dog rescue, the word aggression is the word we don't like to say.
Right.
That's the bad word. So we never want to have to label a dog as being aggressive, but where is the line between resource guarding or reactivity when it does become aggressive? And that's why we don't bring those dogs in if we know they already have the red flags, because the average person doesn't want to deal with that with golden retrievers, because we all think golden retrievers are,
marshmallows.
Big goofy marshmallows. And of course, they can't have any negative behaviors, but we see it, and I've had a lot of trainers tell me that they see golden retrievers as one of the more popular resource guarding breeds. And is it because there's so many, or is it because there's such unrealistic expectations put on the golden retriever, or both?
I don't think it's either of those.
What do you think the reason?
I think retrievers are hardwired to keep things in their mouth, and that program is like, that's mine, I'm keeping it. And then they don't even know why. It's like, well, I'm supposed to take it somewhere and give it to somebody, but it's not you. I really do think that retriever programming that's mine. It's a trigger reaction. And really, I'm working on some work with. I've been working on for a little while on using training retrievers to retrieve instead of the normal resource guarding protocol. So if they have resource guarding, we're actually going to train them to retrieve and have them do the normal retrieve release, which helps them get over their resource guarding.
Oh,
because it goes with their programming. And so I've been working and I'm having lots of fun just with the idea of, okay, so the reason why this dog won't let go of something is because they have this programming that's not being used properly, because they're a pet. And so if we can engage the programming so that they're actually getting a chance to use it, then we can get rid of the maluse, which is the resource guarding. So it's working with it a little bit. And there's some thought that can do it. It's kind of like working with the Malinois. They're supposed to be police dogs for a reason, because they're taking their original, thank you, Mark and Joan, taking their original intent of how they were herders and moving them into being these police dogs, but with particular jobs. It's just a much better way of moving the dog's genetic material into better use. So anyway, I think they're resource guarders because they've been programmed to be, because they're retrievers. And I think we can do better by them.
So are you seeing that in other retriever breeds as well, like
Yes.
labs?
That, that's why I went, uh-oh, I think I'm seeing something here, you know.
Yeah.
I have a friend, where I got it from was a duck toller, actually. I have a friend that's got a one. I was like, hey, this group has a lot of resource guarding as well. And he's a trainer in San Antonio. And he says, yeah, I mean, all of his line, they're really guarding with the mouth stuff. And we started texting back and forth about things and talking about the training as an outlet. And so he's helping me with the concept. So he's testing it in the field, which is kind of cool. So we'll see what comes of it, because, you know, if it works out, that's another way for us to approach this problem, and by going with the dog's tendency instead of against it.
Great.
Yeah, it'd be kind of fun.
So I have one more quick question.
Sure.
Because we've heard this a lot over the years, playing tug with a dog.
Yeah.
Good, bad. What's your advice to us in general in playing tug with dogs, and does it create bad behaviors, or what's the best way to initiate that?
I love structured tug. And so that's tug with qualification, right? So tug can teach the dog impulse control, and it can really help build bond and engagement. But when the human plays tug and cheats and uses tug to rouse the dog really high and then wins every time, you can build frustration in a dog. And frustration can lead to, you know, tugging and become snapping and, you know, all the stuff we say tug is bad for. So it's the human that causes the tug to be bad. And so when I usually see competition in tug, and honestly, I see competition in tug with men where they use it to, you know, ha ha ha, I win with their dog. Then we'll see frustration from the dog come out of that. So structured tug is like, we're going to tug and it's going to be a fun game, and you win sometimes and I let you win, right? And then I win sometimes because you let me win, and it's fun. But we also learn that as soon as the arousal gets to a certain point, we stop. So we learn not to go over a certain point of arousal. And that's a way to learn to get aroused and stop, and aroused and stop. And we're creating impulse control that way. And Diane uses a flirt pole for exactly the same thing. And it's really great. So both of those work really well for helping the dog to learn how to manage their drive and how to manage frustration and how to manage their impulse control. So it's how you use it. But both tug and the flirt pole teach that extremely well.
Yeah. That could be one of our topics for another webinar that we do early next year, and talk about like those impulse control and those types of games or activities for, because Goldens love that stuff, and they need that type of most of them need some sort of activity like that, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're one of the breeds that like to accelerate, or I call it accelerate, is basically you teach them a cue or something and they want to do, okay, great, then let's do it 5,000 more times in 10 minutes. Which is,
I have proof of that right here, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like faster, you know. Now that we know the game, and especially once they figure out the game, you know,
more
to the ground, I get a treat, then it's like I'm just going to start throwing sits in order to get the treats faster. So that's where you start to do things with them, where you start to teach them, okay, might be a sit, but there may be a hold in there as well. Mm-hmm. And then there might be other things involved. And really also too, it's a connection of, if this is the cue and this is the action, then you must do the action that matches the cue.
Yeah.
You can't just start throwing things out. But that's how you get the impulse control for something like that, is where you start to show them then, okay, and slowing it down, which makes them then think about what the process is versus just the, here again, the boom, 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 boom.
And creating the obsession.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you teach wait and take and
Yep.
hold
Yeah.
and
Release
drop or
cues.
release, and you teach, so those games have many cues built in, so they're learning to interact and they're learning to think through the game. So that structured play is really good.
Cool. And you can use it anywhere. Structured walks. I love structured walks.
Mhm.
A lot of what we do in that the class, the leash reactivity class, is rather than just go, 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 can you throw things in amongst the walk to really get your dog to refocus? Then a random stop. I love a random stop.
Yes.
where it's like, they're like, wait, what? And it's like, yes, I want you to look at me and refocus. So there's so many things you can do, but it's fantastic to do that kind of work.
Any other questions? Because as you know, we can talk forever.
I know. I feel I was thinking that I'm like, we could just sit here and probably talk all night, but
Talk phone.
I know you guys, we're so grateful for all the time that you spend with us and helping GRR and helping our community be stronger and better. And I said this, I don't know if I said it at the beginning of this call, but part of our mission is education and creating a strong forum for golden retriever lovers and just about dogs in general. And this is something that we really are passionate about. And as I said, we want to continue this after January. So if you have ideas on things that you guys want to hear, want to learn about, shoot me an email. There's no such thing as a dumb idea. I'm sure I can present anything to Debbie and Diane and they can come up with something. So they put a lot of time and effort into putting this material together in these classes, and we're grateful. And I'm anxious about the dog reactivity thing. So send me that because I really do want to get Breck involved in that. And you guys, these are the experts. So if you have a foster dog or if you've adopted a dog from Gold Ribbon, of course, we're here to support you. But these are the people that we go to as well. We've got our preferred trainers and we have these relationships for a reason because we know that we trust them and what they're talking about.
We appreciate you guys so much and love working with all of you. And nothing makes us happier than a golden.
Thank you for the information.
Oh, thanks everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Bye.
guys. Have a
Thank
great night.
you.